He's Jim Stewart. I'm Rick Collins, and this is Off the Bench. Today we have a FISD sports update. We've got an NFL mock draft. We got Thursday night football. We've got Zeke hearing updates. Today's the big day, maybe. And we've got Mac Engel on the phone talking TCU versus OU. This is a huge weekend for college football.
Yeah, it's number 5 versus number 6. Oklahoma is right on the bubble for the playoff picture, and TCU is also on the bubble. Whoever wins this has a real shot of running the table and making it to the playoffs. Oklahoma owns the edge on offense, but TCU definitely owns defense between the two teams. Oklahoma has the top-ranked offense, plus the third in scoring with the Heisman Trophy winner, finalist, leading candidate in Baker Mayfield. Mac.
Agree to disagree.
Mac, go over a little bit of how you see this game, going forward, because this is a huge matchup for the Big 12.
Yeah, I think it's one of those games where whoever wins, they obviously have the conference's very decent chance of getting into the college football playoff. The whole Notre Dame thing really screws everything up because they're good. But when you look at this team, it truly is one of the rare times that you see that game, that matchup, when it's a good defense versus a good offense. Oklahoma has one of the best offenses in the United States. TCU's defense is one of the best in the United States. They're certainly one of the best in the Big 12 at both. And there's a question of, can a good defense, can a good pitcher shut down a good hitter? And I would bet on TCU with the exception of one thing. I'm not betting against Baker Mayfield. And the only reason Baker Mayfield lost to Iowa State is that Iowa State figured out a way to outscore Oklahoma. Remember, Oklahoma in that game when they lost to Iowa State, they scored 31 points. 31 points ought to be enough. And I don't know if TCU can score 30-plus points on Saturday in Norman.
Yeah, that really is going to be the war of attrition. Which will win you championships, offense or defense? Offense has worked its way and has been proven successful for the Sooners this year so far, going into a supposed defensive juggernaut in Ohio State earlier in the season, at the Horseshoe winning. So how would you sort of compare maybe the Ohio State defense to the TCU defense? Because these are both supposed defensive-oriented teams. TCU has proven more so this year than Ohio State, but how would you maybe compare the two?
I don't even know if I really could. I mean, the one thing Urban Meyer has done at Ohio State is to recruit and build an SEC-like team. And it's hard to do that in Texas, because if you look at the Texas roster, or pardon me, not the Texas roster too, for that matter, but certainly the TCU roster, it's predominantly Texas kids. Gary Patterson will get a handful of guys coming in from, Louisiana and things like that. He's certainly got a good pass rusher from California Junior College in Matt Boson. But the big deal that I would say that favors TCU, unlike, say, Ohio State, which is more of a conventional defense, is that Gary Patterson has always had sort of his own way of running things. And it's contingent upon whether or not he has an inside linebacker who can play in space. His best defenses have had that. His good team a couple of years ago had one in Paul Dawson, who's now a linebacker in the NFL. Darrell Washington's another guy who played in the NFL for a while. He was that guy. And he has that again in Traven Howard. Traven Howard is a guy who can play sideline to sideline and really pursue up the field and sideways to make sure that a 4-yard gain is just that. TCU tackles really well, too. The other thing that they've got going on right now is they've got 8 guys on the defensive line that they can rotate. But their best pass rushers are edge guys, and Ben McAdoo and Matt Boson, who I just mentioned. Those are the guys that can potentially make Baker Mayfield's life a little bit harder. And they did a really good job in Stillwater when TCU went up there a couple months ago. Were double-digit underdogs, and they won. One of the reasons was they got in Mason Rudolph's face, and they did a good job of that. Baker Mayfield's a different guy. He can buy time. He can get away from defensive players. The defensive player can do everything right. And they can stay in their gaps and all that stuff and hold containment and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden Baker Mayfield just makes a play because he can. And that's the wild card about it that you would have to say gives the big edge to Oklahoma. Defensively, there's no doubt about it, TCU is a better team. And if you could take away Baker Mayfield's ability to run and to move around, TCU would win this game. But as long as Baker Mayfield has that and he can get outside those edge rushers a little bit, that's the difference between winning and losing. And I think it's the reason why Oklahoma went into Ohio State and won that game earlier this season.
What about Kenny Hill Jr., though, on the other side of the ball, other side of the spectrum here, with the way he plays, the former South Lake Carroll quarterback? This TCU offense has struggled in quite a few games against defenses that are not necessarily top-ranked defenses, even though Texas, I would say, is getting better defensively. That was a real struggle for him against Texas. This Oklahoma defense has been pretty porous so far this season. Do you think he's going to be able to get in? I think, you said TCU's going to have to score points because Baker Mayfield's going to put up some points in this game, even though TCU's defense is so good. Can Kenny Hill lead some drives, some long drives, to keep Mayfield off the field and put points on the board?
Well, he did it against Oklahoma State, and if you go back and watch that game, he pretty much outplayed Mason Rudolph. Now, Rudolph had a couple of just beautiful throws, but when you look at Kenny Hill, you would say this is a guy who has gone through obviously a lot. He started at A&M and he was replacing Johnny Manziel, who was a Heisman winner. It doesn't work out. He transfers. Then he's replacing Trayvon Boykin, who was a Heisman caliber kind of player, and he struggles. And now as a fifth-year senior, you can clearly see this is a guy who's figured it out. But if you're going to win this game, you're going to have plays from your quarterback. Can he do it? Yeah, he can. But a lot of things are going to have to go right, and he can't make the killer mistake. The game at Iowa State a couple weeks ago, he made killer mistakes, 3 of them. Now, some of it he didn't get helped out on the play calling, but the game against Texas was one of those, a really good defense against another good defense, and an offensive line that eventually was a little bit better than the Texas offensive line, which isn't that good. And Kenny Hill, they were patient enough. They just kept wondering. They just kept plugging away at it, and eventually they were going to pop one, and they did. And they can't do that on Saturday. Now, I do believe Oklahoma's defense is garbage, and their secondary is trash. It doesn't necessarily mean Kenny Hill is going to tear it up, but he's got some good receivers. Jalen Reagor was a kid who was going to go to Oklahoma, but he switched and went to TCU. He's a true freshman, really talented, really good kid. John Diarse is another guy who's looked pretty good. And Kavontae Turpin is another one. That's a very difficult guy to bring down if he can get in space. So he's got toys to do this. Can he do it? Yeah, he can. The big deal about him is Baker Mayfield can make a mistake and come back and get you a play. Kenny Hill's not the kind of guy who can do that. And I still look at the play calling that they give him. I don't think they entirely trust him because you've seen it in the past. You're like, he's going to try to force it when it's not there. But he's a guy who can make plays on his feet. He's a guy who can beat you that if you drop coverage too deep, he can run on you and get a first down. He doesn't necessarily have to play perfect to win this game. But what he cannot do is make more than 1 or 2 killer mistakes, because Oklahoma's offense is just too good. And if you give them too many chances, even as good as TCU's defense is, they're going to burn you.
I agree. The Oklahoma defense has been abysmal this season. And you are right that, Baker will score. It doesn't matter how good a defense you have against him, he will score. It just depends on how much he scores. And when I look across the field at Kenny Hill, who in the last 2 games has only thrown 281 yards on 51 attempts and hasn't scored a touchdown rushing or throwing, that's got to make TCU a little bit nervous unless they're just going to dominate the game with the running, running the ball up the gut or running the ball outside, because right now the last 2 games it seems that Kenny Hill's maybe confidence is a little shot because he hasn't scored anything in the last 2 games.
He's played pretty good defenses, and the Texas defense is legit. I mean, that defense is really legit. The Iowa State, and Iowa State's pretty good. I think people have recognized that now. Yeah, I know they're coming off a loss to West Virginia in Morgantown, but they're pretty good, and that was a legitimate loss. Now, Kenny Hill could have beat them, but he didn't because he didn't. So I think when you say whether his confidence is shaken or not, I don't know if it's really a case of that. I think this is a case. There could be some of that, but I think more to the point, this is a case of a guy who understands this is his last year. He's not going to the NFL, and his ticket is just to win. So if they ask him not to do this, and this, Gary Patterson and that team have really drilled into his head, just don't make the mistake. Punt it. We'll get you a stop, and then go back to work. Well, you can get away with it, and they almost got away with that against Iowa State. Their defense was so good, and they couldn't get a play. Well, you're not going to do that against against Oklahoma, rather. So I think when you look at Kenny Hill, is that this guy's smart. He's been around, he's on track to graduate. He really got it turned around considering how sideways it was going, and even south at Texas A&M. But this kind of game, this is one of those games you remember forever. And I do think it'll be on him to make some of those plays. He's shown in wins against West Virginia, certainly the game at Oklahoma State and Arkansas, Texas to a much lesser extent. He can make those plays. They're in him, but what we've seen is they're not in him as frequently as, say, Baker Mayfield. That's where you see the line. Kenny Hill is a good college quarterback. Baker Mayfield is a great college quarterback.
You know what's interesting is there's one more story, one more wrinkle that sort of is going behind the headlines, and that's there seems to be a bit of a grudge between Baker Mayfield and TCU coach Gary Patterson. It seems like when during the scouting process that Baker wanted to maybe go to TCU, and there was a little bit of bad blood at the end of that experience. What do you see happening between these two games? Do you think that might give Baker a little bit more, a bigger chip on his shoulder, even though he doesn't seem to need one because he seems to be amped up every game he goes into?
Yeah, Baker wanted to come here, and look, Baker wasn't. Gary Patterson called it a spade. Part of the problem when Baker was coming out of high school was his dad, and that happens a lot. You get these dads who are super involved in where their coach and where their son goes to play college football for a variety of reasons. Most of them rooted in good intentions, but they become hyper involved, and it becomes a problem for the staff. So Baker, ends up going to Texas Tech because Cliff Kingsbury's done a really good job of recognizing high school quarterbacks. Can't keep any of them, but he's recognized who the good ones are, including Baker. And then he leaves because he was a reactionary kid, and I understand he hadn't won the job. And it's crazy to think he hadn't won the job. Now, granted, Patrick Mahomes is an absolute monster of a player. So Baker goes to Oklahoma. He gets the transfer rule changed, essentially. That's why he's got this extra year of eligibility, which was the right thing to do on the part of the Big 12. But there was an axe to grind between Baker and TCU. And, college programs fight this all the time, which is they can't offer scholarships to everybody. They can't offer it to everybody. Johnny Manziel wanted to go to TCU, and they didn't offer it to him. They used that scholarship on Trayvon Boykin. And the only other place that offered Manziel was Oregon. Nobody knew that Manziel was going to turn into what he did. And it's just the recruiting. It's just such a crapshoot, and that's why I get sort of irritated at these recruiting rankings. It's monkey see, monkey do. And if Alabama offers, then the kid's a 5-star. If TCU offers, he might be a 3-star. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't. And when Mayfield, I don't even know what Mayfield was when he was coming out. Nobody wanted him. So he goes to Tech. I shouldn't say nobody wants him. He goes out there. It's okay. He gets mad at TCU. He turns it on at Oklahoma. He's really, really good. Now he's this Heisman guy. And all of a sudden it becomes sort of a war of words about what happened when he was being recruited as a high school senior. I'm not necessarily sympathetic to coaches all the time, but in these situations, sometimes you just can't win. Baker Mayfield has owned TCU, too. Beat him last year. He basically beat him 2 years ago, and until he took that hit by Ty Summers, Oklahoma was rolling. Baker Mayfield gets knocked out of the game. Trevor Knight comes in, and then Oklahoma gets crushed. And if it wasn't for a really nice play by Stephen Parker in the end zone on a 2-point conversion attempt by TCU, Oklahoma loses that game. And then Baker also beat TCU when he was at Texas Tech. So he's owned them. And, he's owned them because he's really good. It is whether or not there's any more personal animosity, I doubt it. I think at this point, Baker owns Oklahoma. He is your typical, college stud athlete, a guy he's going to own it. And all the pretty girls that come along being with the great quarterback of the big-time college football team. Now, it's going to go away quick because he ain't going to make it in the NFL because most guys don't, and he sure as hell isn't. But right now, he is. I've made this analogy.
You're killing me, Mac.
You're 6'5" power forward in college basketball. You can be a 6'5" power forward in college basketball and tear it up. You ain't going to translate up to the NBA. But in college, that guy's a monster.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mac. I appreciate it.
You're killing me, Mac. You're killing me. So, just
it's the truth. I'm sorry, it's the truth. Most guys don't make it in the NFL. They just don't. And it's just a fact. Most of them, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and most guys flame out. Go back and look. Vince Young didn't make it. Matt Leinart didn't make it. They're littered with guys who don't make it for whatever reason. These are really good. Baker Mayfield's a really, really good college player. And he might, if he's smart, now I don't know if he might be, if he's smart, you just go and you get a job and you get paid. Look what Colt McCoy has done. He's a multimillionaire. He's set for life, and the guy never plays. My favorite player of all time is Chase Daniel. Southlake kid, went to Missouri, didn't get offered by Texas until late, goes to Missouri, tears it up, doesn't even get drafted. Now he's got a Super Bowl ring and more money than he can count as a backup, doing nothing. They love
holding
him.
the clipboard and on the headset.
Well, why don't we do this, because we have a hard break coming up. Can you just sort of tell us how you think this game's going to go and what you think the final score is going to be?
The line opened at 7, and I tend to be a Vegas guy on this stuff, and the line has been wrong about TCU twice this year. They were a double-digit underdog at Oklahoma State, and then they were 7-point favorite at Iowa State. And those two games obviously went the other way. I think this will be a one-possession game, and I do not think TCU will win. I think Baker Mayfield's going to make a play late, and I think they win, 33-30. I'm just putting my money on Mayfield, that's all.
It's like putting your money on the Patriots. You can't bet against them because Brady is going to make a play to win.
And if they lose, you just got to deal with it. Well, thanks, Mac.
Yeah,
we'll try to get you in next week after the game so you can either gloat about it or talk about how Mayfield's not going to make it at the next level.
I'll be happy to do that.
Thanks again, Mac. Next, we've got Thursday Night Football preview.
We're so excited to invite you to our Stacy Furniture Anniversary Sale.
Save today on Stacy's outstanding selection, up to 50% off select items throughout the store.
Now's the time to buy that new bedroom, living room, or dining room suit. You can't beat these prices anywhere.
Name brands like Bernhard, Hooker, Universal, and Sherrill, all on sale today.
It's Stacy's Anniversary Sale, only happens once a year.
Shop Stacy's today or visit us online at stacyfurniture.com.
Remember, when you're shopping at Stacy's, you're shopping with family.
We got Thursday Night Football. Thanks so much from Mac Engel of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram for coming on talking OU versus TCU. But tonight we've got a big matchup for the NFC West. Arizona Cardinals versus Seattle Seahawks.
It would have been a good matchup, but the Cardinals have been obliterated.
Yes, with injuries.
And you know what? The Seahawks are actually playing a lot better. Their defense seems to be stepping up a little bit. Maybe those old legs still have a little bit of juice in them. And then Russell Wilson has been a monster so far the last couple of years.
And considering the way their offensive line has been built and how much they've struggled to keep Russell Wilson upright, he's made a massive amount of plays so far this season. Both teams are fighting for a position behind the LA Rams, hoping the LA Rams are going to slip. Seattle Seahawks, with a win, really put themselves into a great position to chase down the Rams and win the NFC West. Arizona Cardinals, if they take a loss, this is a huge setback for them. I don't think they can come out of the NFC West with a loss here. I don't think they make it into the playoffs with a loss here. I really think the way Seattle's playing, the way the Rams are playing, those are the two best teams in this division. I think one of those teams is going to end up being the wild card, and one of them is going to end up being the NFC West champion. The Cardinals have to win this game if they want a chance at the NFC West. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it without Palmer.
And the problem is Palmer's not there anymore. Palmer isn't coming back this year. And their star running back looks to not be coming back this year either.
Yeah, David Johnson.
And they've
really replaced him, though.
Yeah, but they really don't have, with Adrian Peterson.
Yes.
But, he's, as we said before, Peterson is not the Peterson of old. He's not the Peterson from Minnesota in the last couple of years. He's not going to be able to carry a team all the way to the playoffs again, especially over defenses like Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle's whole defense is predicated on the fact that they could stop the run. They've got Earl, they've got Sherman, they've got all these Wagner, they've got all these players who are fast and hard hitting,
great tacklers,
great tacklers. And the problem is Adrian Peterson is built on the fact that he can break tackles
and get to that second level and break those second level tackles, and it's going to be really difficult against the Seattle defense.
Yep, and we just have to keep looking at the fact that Seattle's offense is playing at a Pro Bowl level. Russell Wilson, if he doesn't make the Pro Bowl this year, there's something wrong with the Pro Bowl. He has been a monster so far in the last couple games, and if he continues till the end of the year, this is going to be a hard team to beat. going into the playoffs, and the only team right now in the NFC that I see being able to upend the Seahawks is the Philadelphia Eagles, the only team that's going to be able to do
Yeah, I
that.
think it was interesting to see that they lost last week against the Washington Redskins, and the Redskins have clearly played better than a lot of people expected so far this season. Even though Kirk Cousins coming back and they thought they're an offensive juggernaut, the defense is getting better, but there was just some pieces missing. But the Redskins were able to win that game despite basically being outrun, outpassed, everything, outplayed across the board, and they managed to win that game. There's an opportunity for the Cardinals to do something, to watch that film and do something similar against the Seahawks team and win. But again, look, 8 out of the last 8 games after a loss, Seattle's 8-0. They know how to come back from a loss and win a game.
Yes.
And I don't think that changes. I think this is a Seattle team. They know how to win games. This is a game they'll come back. I think they're going to win. It's going to be more than one score.
And the real interesting part of the NFC West is the fact that no matter how well the Seahawks are playing right now, they are in a hole that they might not get out of. They'll make a wild card spot in the playoffs, but the Rams look like they're pretty hard to catch right now. They're
not going to
jockeying
them
behind.
They've got to
LA
hope
Rams.
that the Rams slip up somewhere.
They need to be able to. They hope the Rams fall apart. That this rookie coach that has now come in here and taken over, that has made Goff and Gurley rejuvenated players from the last 2 years when we thought they both were busts, can continue this magic. Almost have a Lincoln Riley sort of feel since we were talking Oklahoma. This young offensive-minded coordinator who has a good, trusted defensive coordinator to be able to run that side and be able to keep this juggernaut going. That's the LA Rams, because nobody thought the LA Rams were going to do what they're doing this year. Nobody.
And if somebody said they thought they were going to, they'd be a lie.
And Donald held out the whole preseason.
Yes. Aaron Donald, yeah.
So we thought that, man, this defensive line's not going to do good. This defense in whole is going to struggle because that mainstay piece hasn't even made training camp. Oh, Goff is a bust.
Yeah.
Gurley is a bust. All they needed was a breath of life with a creative offensive-minded coach.
Yeah.
And we really are seeing the ramifications of that, of a quick out front lead in the standings for the Rams. And now these other teams are having to play catch-up. And like you said, they're all hoping that the Rams can stumble.
His head coach is your age.
Yes,
he's
my
extremely
age.
young. He seems to be relating well with the players and really has them playing a totally different game than they were playing last year. And we talked about before the season started, the Rams are going to have to use some of their weapons in different ways than they have in the past. It seemed very obvious to the outsider to say, look, the way their offense is running, they're not using the weapons the way they need to be used. And now this offensive coordinator jumps in and does exactly what I think we all thought should happen. And you see what happens when you get these guys in position to do the things they need to do.
And talking about defenses and that Rams team, you switch back over to the Seattle Seahawks. They've held Adrian Peterson the last 2 meetings under 2 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And that was even back when he was playing with the Saints and the
that's
Vikings.
A huge problem because the Arizona Cardinals without Palmer are going to have to rely heavily on Adrian Peterson running the ball and managing the clock, because Drew Stanton is not going to be the savior.
Even 2, 3, 4 years ago, when Adrian Peterson was still in his prime, and the Seattle Seahawks were just starting to become that that 12-man defense, the Legion of Boom, the Adrian Peterson struggled even in his prime against this defense.
Yeah.
Now, they've both gotten older.
Yes.
But they are not as old as Adrian Peterson. And the fact that, yes, he is AP or AD all day. You can feed him all day. The question is it worth it if you're only getting 2 yards?
Well, yeah, and not only that, but the fact that he's much older and those 2 yards might not be 2 yards anymore, and the fact that you ran him into the ground last weekend, it takes a while. The older you get, the longer it takes to recover. I don't know if he's had enough time to recover. Now, Adrian Peterson seems to be a different animal because he's able to recover faster from any injury than anybody in the history of any sport ever.
He's a genetic freak.
It's incredible.
But let's stop singing the praises of the Seahawks for just a minute and remember that last week they dominated the Redskins, dominated them. And still lost.
Yeah.
And the problem was everybody thought that when they go in, that they are not going to be able to beat the Seattle Seahawks team. And they were right to a point, unless you take out the scoreboard. They beat them in rushing yards. They beat them in passing yards. They beat them in defense. They beat them in time of possession. And the Redskins were still able to win, which means that if you have an accurate downfield thrower, which unfortunately the Cardinals right now have been proven to have that,
right,
unless this kid has a miracle game.
Yeah.
They have proven, the Seahawks have proven to give up last-minute long drives.
It's another Michigan State quarterback, Drew Stanton, right? Mm-hmm. And from Kirk Cousins to Drew Stanton, I think there's a possibility that, a good game is possible, but he isn't Kirk Cousins. Let's just be honest. Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. He was able to win that game on a last-minute drive. I don't think you're going to see the same opportunity. I see Seahawks over the Cardinals 28-20.
Yeah, because if Arizona doesn't win this game, that door that is open right now to be able to get back into the AFC West playoff picture, NFC West playoff picture is gone.
Yes.
They have to win this game. Seattle Seahawks still have a little bit of buffer room.
Desperation should be there, but I'm not sure that desperation is going to be enough.
No, Adrian Peterson has just got to have a monster game.
Yeah.
That's it.
200 yards, couple of touchdowns. That would be the way that Arizona can stay in this game.
And he has to have a back-breaking run, one of 60 yards or more.
Yeah.
That, Adrian with that head bobbing as he's running. We need to have that kind of a play to break the will of the Doomsday defense, which is hard to do. They are a very confident bunch. But, we've seen this even in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They can win all the way up to the end.
You never know.
And lose
any given Sunday. Speaking of any given Sunday, we don't even know if Zeke's going to play this weekend. When we get back, we'll talk more about the Zeke hearing today. Next.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We do not know if Zeke is going to be back this weekend. Today he's got a hearing. Did
you hear there was a hearing today?
Yes, and it's a huge hearing because this is going to determine whether he's going to sit for the 6 games or not. And I think he's going to end up playing this weekend. I don't think we're going to hear back at least until next week on this hearing. But the courts have taken longer before. Remember Deflate. This is where Deflategate was ruled in favor of the NFL over Tom Brady, but it took through the offseason before the ruling came down. So I wouldn't be surprised if Zeke plays the rest of the year now and we don't hear about the 6-game suspension until the offseason.
And right now is a perfect example to see how well the Dallas Cowboys coaching staff adjusts, because this is going to be the second week in a row that Zeke misses a Thursday practice.
Yes.
And last Thursday
Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday, but excuse me, the last Thursday practice was the practice of blitz pickups and important scheme issues when it comes to figuring out what the other team does on defense to be able to protect Dak. And they need to be able to move those kind of situations around a little bit to a Monday or Tuesday, knowing that hearing is happening on a Wednesday and Thursday. Zeke is now in New York. He has to be there for opening and closing arguments.
Well, the Cowboys want him to be there.
Yes.
They think it'll help his position.
That's why I said he has to be there.
He has to be there.
If he wasn't there, it's not going to look good. He has to be there.
Yeah.
So what is now happening is now he's going to have another week where he doesn't just miss one game. I mean, one practice. He misses 2. He might even miss 3, depending on when this hearing ends.
Yeah.
And then going into a Sunday game where he's going to have to meet them where they're playing, because he's coming from a totally different location. Question is he going to be prepped enough to be able to play this game? Because we all know he can run the ball, and all he's going to do is run the play that is given to him in his helmet and then try to find a hole. That's not the hard part.
Well, I think one of the things they're going to have to do this weekend is, even if Zeke's available to play, you're going to have to use Alfred Morris, especially in passing downs, for blocking purposes, because blocking scheme is really what all this practice is about when it comes down to players needing to understand where they position themselves against a defense based on whatever defensive scheme they expect to see. So I hope we'll see more of Alfred Morris this weekend, whether or not Zeke is available. And we've got to, because we've got to assume at some point we are not going to have Zeke. We just have to assume that, because we don't know when this ruling's going to come down. It could come down next week. It could come down today. It could come down 3 weeks from now. It could come down. We don't know. So we've got to be prepared for Alfred Morris to take over at starting running back.
We as in the Cowboys.
Yes.
So I think we should dive a little bit more into this court case. It is in the Second Circuit of the U.S. federal court system.
Yes.
This is the court area where the NFL won the Tom Brady court case.
Yeah.
Was in the Second Circuit, because the next step after that is Supreme Court. They've got to go up, and that's where it will end up if they don't resolve it in this section of the federal system. And they said
that it very rarely will get picked up by the Supreme Court. Anything after the Second Court, this is usually where a determination's made, and that's
now it's not. See, now we've gone into the realm of there is not just one judge anymore. There's going to be 3 judges sitting on the bench. They are all going to have to agree, or 2 out of 3 are going to have to agree one way or the other. The grand jury really doesn't have anything to do with this case anymore. We really have to put this in the judge's hands and hope they do a good job. But to be perfectly honest, either way is not going to look good for any person.
No.
So Zeke's reputation when it comes to, because that's what he's fighting for right now.
Yeah.
His legal court case has already been resolved. They dropped it. Right now it is the fact that he might serve 6
game suspension for assumed domestic violence.
Yeah, and the other issue is that, and something that Shireen Williams has pointed out to us is right now he's fighting for his reputation. The problem is it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
His reputation only matters outside of maybe his family and friends is for money and endorsements and all that stuff, his name and his reputation.
I think
but the problem is it's already been...
Well, I think it's been tarnished, but it would be ruined.
So are you telling me right now, even if he wins this, you as a...
I think it's different. I think it's absolutely clear.
Would you pick him up as a sponsor if you're a...
Not me, but I think there will be people that will.
You mean like
I think there's a total difference. If it
has anything to do with women and children, it won't
doesn't matter. If it gets dropped, you'll see that now.
Perception is reality.
Yes, I understand. But what I'm saying is that they see the perception is based off of whether he gets this cleared out or not. If he gets this cleared out, there will be more of a perception that
it'll take a while to get over
it. He won't serve the suspension, so people will not remember that this all occurred in the future. I promise you there is a difference. Now, we're talking about... Just let me speak. We're talking about a 50% difference. So we're saying his reputation, whether or not this gets dropped, 50% tarnished. It's already been tarnished, 50%. If he doesn't win this, it's 90% tarnished. That means it's going to be very difficult for him to get an opportunity. I think he's still got a 50% opportunity to find endorsements, and that's going to be going forward unless something else comes up.
I think it's a lot more muddy than you think. Yeah, 50% on this deal alone, but he's also already compiled a rap sheet behind this incident. So the next time he comes out and he's done something stupid at a St. Patrick's parade, or he does something silly on a boat, or he does something silly where he gets maybe in trouble with drinking, they're going to go, well, he also went to court for this. He also did those things. So
he has to get through this, and then he has to do nothing.
Yes.
Nothing wrong for the rest of his career to get those endorsements.
But let's also look at the fact that
it's going to be a struggle.
That's not going to be the worst part of the situation. Is if he wins, it's not just good for his reputation, because now he's not left to his own devices. The worst thing that could possibly happen for Zeke is to get suspended, because that's 6 weeks by himself.
Yes.
And we all know.
No pay. Yes.
No, but we all know what happens to Zeke when you leave him by himself. He gets into drinking. He gets probably into some recreational
Well, he's doing that whether he's suspended or not. I imagine it would only get worse if he is suspended. So I think it is a serious problem. Not as much for Zeke, but for the Cowboys.
Because the Cowboys can have no contact with him. So that means they can't send out people to help him get through this time where this isn't like getting completely suspended from the NFL like Pac-Man Jones, where they could go, okay, we're going to give you someone to make sure you're good until you're reinstated. They can't touch him. They can't talk to him. He can't come visit. He can't talk to any of the players. Yeah. He is completely cut off from the Cowboys.
It's a serious issue for the Cowboys if he gets a suspension, because I think
the maturity.
I think they're gonna find that they're gonna be looking for another running back in a year or two.
Yep.
It really is going to be a huge problem for them. When we come back, we've got an FISD sports update. We've also got our NFL way too early mock draft next.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made her college years happen. Opening that education savings account when she was little. Spearheading a campus tour. And another, and another, and another, and another. Bam! Deciphering financial aid. She was like, what? Well, now she's like, you aced planning for college. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
The NFL mock draft, way too early expectations from us.
Are we sure it's way too early? Because there are rumblings.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we can look at.
But for you, it's way too early because you're a timing guy.
I know. I want to be doing it right before the draft starts. But you look at who are the bottom feeders, the bottom dwellers in the NFL, and I don't think that's going to change. So I think we can safely say that at least the top 5, and we're going to do a top 10, are definitely going to be the teams that are going to be drafting there. And I don't think the order is necessarily going to matter because there's going to be needs that are going to have to be met.
Well, let's dive into the first little bit of tidbit information coming out of the NFL because, you know, they're usually pretty tight-knit when it comes to the information leaking out of their locker rooms. But right now, the New York Giants is leaking like a sieve when it comes to stuff that's going on. It is.
I love you get sieve. I think almost every episode.
Yeah.
Now.
Porous, leaking. It's an old car.
Titanic.
Okay? Titanic. The problem is now Ben McAdoo there's probably an 80% chance he's out.
And they're saying even before the season ends, he'll be out.
Because he's lost the locker room. At least from a lot of people, there have been unanimous sources or players that wish to not go on the record, which if they're going to do that, man, don't make it anonymous. Be a man. If you're going to say horrible stuff like they are.
That's why you don't say it.
Yeah. But you know what? Then don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
Then don't say anything off. You're not tough enough to say, put your name on those comments.
Don't say anything. It's stupid that they're leaking this information.
So what it is and there's talks that Eli might not be there either. So if that's the case, then the Giants have openly said in memos that they are now telling their scouting staff to look for a quarterback.
Wow.
Whether it's to replace him next year or to find that quarterback of the future, because teams are starting to now look at the New England Patriots and what they've done with their backups, right? Brissett and Garoppolo, who were two people that they brought in the first or second rounds in some of these drafts, have been valuable trading tools later in the careers of their starting quarterbacks, right? And these franchises. I do not see the landscape of the NFL changing that much. I do think it's smart that if you have an older quarterback or maybe you don't have a real good backup, that you do maybe bring in a second, third, fourth round draft pick as a quarterback in to just see how they do.
Yeah.
Because you never know when your quarterback's going to go down. Look at Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Right? Aaron Rodgers goes down, Hundley goes in, and Hundley can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, I bet you every single one of the administration of the Green Bay Packers wishes they had brought in at least a first or second or maybe even a third round draft pick at quarterback to at least
tide them over. Yeah.
And they haven't. They've got to deal with undrafted free agents or late round draft picks.
Yeah, because they're still going to be a decent team. They're going to end up being probably around 500. They may or may not make the playoffs. I think it's going to be difficult now if the Lions keep winning. But they're not going to be in the top 5, top 10 picks. There are going to be quite a few quarterbacks that are going to be off the board by the time the Green Bay Packers get around to picking.
And the vice president of player operations when it comes to, or player...
For the New York Giants?
Yeah, for the New York Giants has gone and personally scouted Rosen and UCLA's quarterback.
Yeah, that's Rosen.
Yeah, Rosen.
Jeff Rosen. Josh Rosen, sorry. I think he's a very good quarterback. They talked about comparing him to... I think
Another quarterback.
Yes, another quarterback who recently
What team?
came out and played really well for the not for the Packers, but it doesn't matter. They wanted to compare him, and they said, look, he has the same lack of wins against top. Oh, Carson Wentz.
Okay.
Let's see. Sorry. Brain
You
fart
acted
there.
like it was some obscure quarterback.
I know. It just slipped my mind. Carson Wentz and how he wasn't able to win against top competition.
Mm-hmm.
And they're seeing the same thing from Rosen,
and Darnold.
But the talent, well, this is specifically about Rosen because that's who
But here's the problem. You look at the last couple quarterbacks that they've brought into the league that was, man, this guy's got a loud talent.
Well, I was looking it up here.
Look at
Davis
Joe Flacco.
Webb. Yeah.
Joe Flacco and Carson Palmer. Eli Manning, if he didn't have those elite defenses, probably be in the same boat. But, you look at a lot of these, Tannehill, a lot of these quarterbacks who they're like, man, he's got an arm, man, he's got feet, but he does not win.
Yeah.
That's why I don't understand. I understand that people don't think Baker Mayfield's big enough or fast enough or whatever.
It always comes up to Baker Mayfield.
No, but I'll give you a perfect example. Everybody thought the same thing of Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He's too small. He doesn't have a big enough arm. He's athletic.
But
he's a winner.
They also thought the same thing about Johnny Manziel.
But Johnny Manziel wasn't his talent.
Two ends of the realm here.
No, but Johnny Manziel is not the same issue. Johnny Manziel had the talent to play.
Okay.
It was his off-the-field issues that kept him off the field. So that's a totally different. We don't know how well Johnny would have done because Johnny could have been a Russell Wilson because he is that improvising, can get a guy open, can scramble, sort of like the Baker and the Russell. But I don't get if you got proven winners at the college level, big-time winners, not guys that are at smaller D2 schools or smaller like a Montana or North Dakota State. But you have proven big conference winners.
What about Tim Tebow?
Yeah, but everybody knew that he wasn't going to be.
But he was able to win a playoff game. But still, okay. You
threw a little wrench in.
Yeah, I threw a wrench in here. Okay, so the New York Giants currently have Geno Smith and Davis Webb. Davis Webb's the guy that they're thinking we're going to have to go to Davis Webb if Eli Manning has to come out. And there's I think a good chance that Eli Manning is not going to be the starting quarterback at the end of the season. Davis Webb, as they look at him, is not the quarterback of the future. He is a backup quarterback sitting there. Geno Smith is really not somebody they're going to hold on to. I think he's gone at the end of the season. So I think you're right. I think they're going to draft a quarterback, and let's
dive into it. You've got your first pick, because mine will come out next week, so we can compare. Your first pick, Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley to the Cleveland Browns.
I say Saquon because I think he's like Sasquatch. He's this big, huge, thick kid that just runs over everybody.
Yeah, and I think the reason I have the Browns taken him, the Browns are going to be the worst team. I think they need a playmaker. They need a guy who can run the ball, who can catch the ball out of the backfield.
They need another guy that they can put behind a horrible defense and just beat the crap out of, and his career ends within 3 years.
Well, I know, but I think one of the problems is that they've got their quarterback. He's injured, but they've got their quarterback. I don't think they go quarterback. I would say if they are really not sold on Kaiser, they might go quarterback here. But I think what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and create an offense around Kaiser. I think this is the guy that could take the pressure off of Kaiser and give him an opportunity to win games.
And after, I can't disagree with your number one pick because he is probably the most complete back in college football right now. It's the next one that I've got a little bit of problem with. Because you've grabbed a kid who throws the ball like 60 times a game, doesn't understand how to go under center, doesn't understand how to hand the ball off, really. I mean, he does it with Hill like 12 times a game. But he doesn't understand a balanced defense. You're going into San Francisco where their teams for the last decade have been hand the ball off. They've basically been a cookie cutter of the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of years. Run, 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 throw. Run, throw,
once they
run.
lost Kaepernick, yes. But I think that we're going to see a change there. I think they've got to find a quarterback who's going to be able to throw the ball down the field, who can make big plays.
But I don't think they have the tools to run an open West Coast.
I think Rudolph is the guy to do it.
But you have to have the tools. You have to have the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the running backs to be able to run a West Coast, where those running backs have to be able to run routes. Those tight ends have to be able.
I don't think Carlos Hyde sticks around. They've got to make some big changes on offense. Defensively, I think if they make some offensive changes and get a team on the field that can move the ball, that their defense
Let's
is going
move
to be
to
better.
to the team we were just talking about before in New York. New York, you have Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. I think it's
the turnover machine.
It's Sam Darnold or it's Josh Rosen. I could have gone Josh Rosen here. I think maybe they decide at some point that Sam Darnold just has the physical tools.
Those two have proven
better
that
than
they can't know.
Rosen.
Those two have proven that they can't handle stress. They can't. Both teams have struggled, and when they do struggle, they throw picks like they're Oprah giving away cars. You get a pick, and you get a pick, and you get a pick. You remember in the first 6 weeks, Darnold threw 9 interceptions in the first 6 weeks.
The NFL, they know what they're doing. Look, they know what they're doing when they're drafting quarterbacks.
I give you a 50-50
How many
on that
times
one.
have we seen a third round or later draft pick turn into a great quarterback?
Brett Favre.
That was 30, 40 years ago.
Russell Wilson.
So Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, that's it. Outside of that, it's all been first-round pick quarterbacks.
Cousins?
He's not that great yet. He hasn't proven anything yet in the NFL.
Ooh.
He hasn't proven anything yet in the NFL. Dak hasn't proven himself in the NFL.
No one has proven
Carson Wentz. They knew what they were doing when they got Carson Wentz. He wasn't winning a lot of big games.
But let's also look at the first-round draft picks. You've got Bortles, you've got Tannehill, you've got all these guys that were top 15 picks that have done nothing either. So I'll give you that they
look at the percentage. Look at the percentage, though. The percentages are on my side, not your side.
But
so
I give
win.
them a 50.
I win. Okay.
I give them 50-50 chance.
But I think outside of that, now you're going to see, okay, there's going to be some defensive players going pretty quickly after the top 3. Because I think those top 3 teams desperately need offensive.
The coolest and funniest name in the NFL.
There's 2 Chubbs in college football. This is Bradley Chubb, the defensive end from North Carolina State. Look, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers desperately need end rushers. They've got defensive tackles galore, but they don't have anybody in the end who can rush a quarterback. They need it, and this is the best guy on the board at defensive end.
I don't. If I was going to go with Tampa Bay, that's a good, safe pick. They need either a running back or an offensive lineman. They need that right now. Their defense is fine.
I think Saquon Barkley would be a good fit for them if he's there at 4. So I think that's a possibility.
And the other issue is with
there's no offensive linemen who are top 4.
But with Winston right now, the problem is that he's throwing the ball a ton.
Yeah.
Why would you have someone like the muscle hamster back there to hand the ball to who is a proven commodity in the NFL that can run, and they don't use them?
Yeah.
So my problem is I don't care who you insert into Tampa Bay's offense because they've got the skill. They should be killing people.
Yeah.
They've got a deep threat in Deshaun Jackson. They've got a possession receiver in Mike Evans, who's not going to do much this week because he's suspended. But they've got a proven running back, and they don't use them the way they need to be used. Because what they do is they throw it 60 times a game. They barely hand it off. The defenses all back up and cover those guys because they know they're not going to run the ball.
There's deeper issues at Tampa Bay outside of talent.
Do they need therapy?
I think coaching is a major issue.
Do they need therapy?
I think we need to move on. Cleveland Browns, they've got Houston's pick. Wow, that could turn into a great pick for them.
Yeah, I think wide receiver, Sutton, you've got a great point there. They need wide receivers for
Kaiser to throw to if he comes back. And if they don't bring Kaiser back and they draft Darnold or Rosen or Baker Mayfield at number 1, that would be a great opportunity to have a rookie wide receiver and a rookie quarterback coming at the same time.
Then you've got Indianapolis Colts. You have them getting Josh Rosen, which is weird because you must think that either Luck is out next year or that they're going to trade him.
I have a bad feeling about this Luck deal. I think there's a lot of people.
We were having discussions yesterday about how you thought. We had a Mavs insider who knows a lot about the league who was talking about how they were purposely sitting Ben Simmons
and Joel Embiid, and now maybe Markelle Fultz.
So I really think that they're purposely sitting.
They're tanking so they can get a weapon to play.
Andrew Luck
so
right now.
maybe
look at what happens with Brissett right now. He's getting killed.
Well, that'll tell us if Andrew Luck is healthy by the time the NFL draft rolls around and they're committed to Luck, then they don't go to quarterback. They obviously go offensive line. I think Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame or the guard from Notre Dame, Quentin Nelson, would be great offensive linemen to help restock that offensive line because that offensive line is really bad right now.
But LA, I totally disagree with your LA Chargers pick. they need defense. They need defense bad.
Yeah.
It's not even, they've been bad on defense for a long time, but they are really bad this year. Joey Bosa is the only good thing that has going on the Chargers defense. And even they drafted Monte Teo.
Yeah.
He did horrible. He went to the Saints, and now he's doing really well.
Yeah.
So there is something going on that defense. You either have to change coordinators for defense, or you need to just bring in so much talent that you can't muck it up.
Yeah, I think a middle linebacker would certainly help the Chargers, but the problem is there's not a middle linebacker who's this high in the draft. They could trade back. That's a huge possibility. They could trade back and pick up an extra pick and start reloading that defense, because I don't think this team lasts that long the way it's currently constructed.
The Bengals choose a defensive back in Fitzpatrick from Alabama, and the New York Jets choose a guard. I can't argue with either of those picks, because Cincinnati
but you
needs
are going to
defense.
argue with my number 8 pick then. The Denver Broncos taking Baker Mayfield.
I don't mind. I think that'd be a great.
They've got to have a quarterback.
And they've got weapons for him to throw to.
Yes.
I think it'd be a great.
This feels like a Tim Tebow opportunity for them to bring in a guy who has a great set of skills. He's a winner. But I'm just saying that they did the same thing.
You compared to a guy who could throw a lot in college to someone who can't.
Listen, just wait a second. I keep having to ask him to listen today. Remember when they brought Tebow in? Everybody thought this is a joke. He can't play in this offense. He's not going to, help them into the playoffs. He helped them not only into the playoffs, but win a playoff game. This Denver organization knows how to find a winning quarterback and put them in position to win.
Except for Paxton Lynch and
he's
Brock
not a winning quarterback.
And Brock Osweiler.
Not a winning quarterback.
But they brought those guys in. They drafted them.
Paxton Lynch is gone. Osweiler's gone. They've got to find a quarterback in this draft. Baker Mayfield is the kind of guy that the Denver Broncos would pick. I think that's a pick for them in the first round.
And when we come back, we'll be talking FISD football. FISD signing day update. I'm so amped about football and all. We've been talking about football.
We'll get to the Thursday night matchup up here in District 13-5A as well. So, next.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
We want to congratulate all of the Reedy athletes that have signed with their first class leaving in a varsity program. It is amazing, and we are so proud of them.
Yeah, not only Reedy, but all of FISD. There were a ton of signings yesterday morning. We were able to go to Reedy and Liberty for some of those signings. One of the biggest signings, at least locally, is going to be the SMU signee, 6'2", Rachel Wolf, Reedy High School outside hitter. I saw her. She towers over me. And
that's your short.
I guess I'm short, but I don't want to feel that short. But she is tall. SMU's got a great outside hitter. I think it's great for their program to keep developing. There were a ton of athletes, though, that signed yesterday. TCU got some new players. LSU got a volleyball player. This is great for Frisco ISD to have all these signings.
A&M got a cross-country runner.
Look for more on our unifyfrisco.com website. We're going to have a whole production of some of the signings that we were able to see yesterday morning. Now, let's move on to tonight's big matchup in FISD 13-5A football. Lone Star versus Independence. This is a game that Independence has to have, and unfortunately, they're going against a Lone Star team that has not been beaten in district so far.
I look at it this way. This is the perfect trap game because Lone Star doesn't need to win to get in the playoffs. They're already locked.
They've already locked in the District 13-5A championship.
But the problem is that if they lose this game, that means they have a losing streak going into the playoffs, which can mess with mentality. So I have a real suspicion that Independence is going to get throttled tonight because I can't see Lone Star and Jeff Rayburn at the helm pulling any kind of foot off the pedal.
No.
They're going to just They want to make a statement going into the playoffs.
Yes.
They want to, because if they don't win a championship this year, they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. They are one of the best teams.
They've been
in the
healthy,
state.
and they have a ridiculous amount of talent defensively and offensively. Rivers, the quarterback's been awesome. Kirby Bennett, the running back, has been incredible. And then obviously Nick Bolton-led defense has been untouchable, really, so far this season. They've had more shutouts than I've ever seen on a schedule for a 5A
A lot of zeros?
team. A lot of zeros for other teams. I don't know if Independence ends with a 0, because I do think, this could get out of hand quickly. And if it's out of hand quickly, they're going to rest all their starters. They've done that in the past 3 games, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do it again.
And those backups are hungry.
Yes.
Because they are going to be the ones that will be starting next year.
The leaders for next year for them.
So they're going to want to come in, and they're going to want to make a statement. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is, like you said, either a shutout or a blowout. And Independence has nothing to be disappointed about if that happens. You've stepped in front of someone.
The buzzsaw right here in this district.
And the reason why is because, I think it's a great feather in the cap for the entire district if they are able to win a state title in whoever does it, whether it's Reedy or Lone Star or the other.
Well, they're going to get an opportunity to have a 5A Division I and a 5A Division II championship. I think it's going to be really challenging because the 5A Division I includes Highland Park, it includes Denton Ryan, who are 2 teams right now that look like the best teams maybe in the state.
Division I is going to be, if they make Division I, and I think that should be a feather in their hat first of all, and if they can take on some of these teams and put up a really decent fight, I think that's another
But it's unfortunately, Reedy and Lone Star, the 2 best teams, are going to be in Division II. So they've got a great opportunity.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No. Either of them have a great opportunity. They'll have Alito there, which Alito's there every year. But those Division I teams, the next 2 teams, probably going to be Centennial in either Independence or Liberty. Not Liberty, I'm sorry. I'm blanking on the name again, but those 2 next teams are going to be playing that Division I game, and when you're playing against Highland Park and Denton Ryan, it's going to be really challenging.
Here's the interesting part. Denton Ryan came in and played Lone Star.
Yeah, and beat them. But a very close game.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that when these teams do go up into Division I, there is going to be possibly 2 teams that go up to Division I. There is nothing wrong with getting beat in a Division I playoff because your juggernaut in the district, your Lone Star, got beat by Denton Ryan.
Denton Ryan, who's considered the best team.
So
look, Denton Ryan, if Highland Park is able to beat them, I think that would be amazing for Highland Park. Denton Ryan looks like the best team in 5A Division I. I think they've got a clear path to that championship. Highland Park's really the only team that would be staying in the way.
I'll tell you what, I think it would be exciting if somehow, and it's not going to happen, but somehow Lone Star got into Division I. That would be an awesome
Well, they'd have to grow, and I don't think it's going to happen.
I was just saying, it would be a great rematch.
But we see it. Newman Village right down the street it's part of the Lone Star District, and it's growing. It's getting bigger and bigger, so it wouldn't be a huge surprise. Sorry, Wakeland was the other school, would be in that division.
And they've got a bunch of great players that are looking to be committed to big schools coming up this offseason. And I think the talent for Reedy, Lone Star, Wakeland is just going to keep growing because this district in 13-5A
still growing. It's still getting better and better.
They're a winning district regardless of sport.
You look at some of the younger players, and it's incredible the amount of talent.
Go to the athletic director's office. There's a lot of titles in there.
They'll love to brag about it, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of titles. And with that,
Game starts tonight, 9 p.m. at the Star. If you want to make it, go out and see Lone Star because they are going to be one of the best teams in the 5A Division II playoffs.
And we'll see you tomorrow with an all-new Off the Bench.